Talk about meeting the economic and technical challenges of wafer test. Mike was born and raised in South Central British Columbia. Can't get my mouth around that. I've only had one cup of coffee this morning. Anyway, he left to go to grad school in Pasadena. He married a California girl and never left. He's still here. Consistent with the BC stereotype, he's a great fly fisherman, so he's tied all of his flies and he goes out there and I think he's also learned how to tie ties, which is California guys typically don't do, but that's because you're from BC, right? Anyway, Mike, why don't you tell us about Wafer Probe, and thank you for coming today.
Thanks, man. Is this on? Yeah? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to open the session here today. We are going to try and navigate, there we go. We're going to share with you some of the ways we're collaborating with our customers and with other vendors in the semiconductor test supply chain on how to meet the joint economic and technical challenges associated with wafer test, which, as we're all aware, continue to advance and continue to become more challenging, especially on the economic side. We'll start with a quick introduction to who we are. We've been around for a while, but not many people know who we are. Frame the challenges a little bit, and then dive into some case studies. And we're going to take a two-pronged approach in looking at the case studies. We're going to look at one, which is obviously a big focus for most people in the test industry, and that's reducing the cost of test, making sure we make it cheaper on a per-chip basis to test these chips as they come out. Especially important in the consumer and consumer mobile markets that we're increasingly addressing. But the other place we're going to discuss is how we increase the value of test, how we increase the return associated with the activity associated with testing, which is often sort of put in the corner as a non-value added activity. We're going to show you a case study where we've worked with another vendor as well as a key customer in actually improving and increasing the value associated with the activity. So starting off, a little bit about MicroProbe. As I said, we've been around for quite a while. Our 35th anniversary was several years ago. In that 35 years, we've been focused on addressing the logic, system on a chip, RF, microprocessor, graphic processor type applications. Really focused on the non-memory space of probe cards. And for many years that wasn't a very sexy place to be, but we've seen some pretty significant growth associated with serving that segment over the 35 years. Most recently, we've introduced a MEMS probe card technology. And in the past 12 months have shipped more than 500 of these MEMS probe cards. The case study I'll share with you is based on our MEMS technology. So we've seen significant growth in our overall business. And as you see, in the past 2 years, we've gone from number 14 in the VLSI Research probe card market share ratings up to number 5 in 2009, breaking into into the top 5 for the first time in company history. So this is an achievement we're very, very proud of. It's largely a result of the adoption of our MEMS technology. I will say, however, that we're one of the few vendors that offers a complete portfolio of all the relevant probe card technologies, because we're very interested in helping people on an application-by-application basis, making sure they have the right solution for test. And cantilever cards, although they certainly don't represent the leading edge, are a very, very viable solution for large pitch, low parallelism, simple test, where you need a probe card fast. And so we continue to serve that market and will continue to as part of our overall strategic plan. We also have a significant vertical business, so these are like Cobra cards for flip chip test, and on those technologies have sort of built forward and introduced a MEMS technology on top of that, which, as I said, is responsible for our significant growth. We have a presence, as anyone who's going to be successful in this business must, around the world. So big office and factory in Shanghai, service in Hsinchu, Taiwan to help support all of the wafer test houses there, and continuing to expand our overall global footprint. We also have a relatively strong institutional investor base. Obviously, if you're going to introduce, develop, and support a complex MEMS probe card line, the capital associated with that is not insignificant. And so we're pleased to have Intel Capital, Flywheel Ventures, and Gemini backing us in that venture. So that's a little bit about microprobe. What are we all about? Well, as we discussed, right, and as we'll share with you a case study, we're laser focused on helping people reduce the cost of testing. I don't think this is news to anybody who operates in this segment. If you want to play, you need to be helping people reduce their cost. And that's things associated with, obviously, the capital cost, the cost of tooling, how long it lasts, how many chips you can test, and very important in a high volume line is the ability to reduce or at least drive down the overall maintenance costs associated, making sure the complex test cells have a decent amount of output. We're also focused on the other knob, if you will, which is increasing the value of the activity. So there are examples, and I'll share one of them with you, where we've worked with people to help increase the value of what we do and not just have it viewed among the customer base as a step that purely is a cost center. We want to make sure that we're helping people increase the value of what they do. And if you can do both of those things, you can significantly help people's overall return on their investment, which is one of the big reasons we're all in this business, to try and turn $1 into $2, $3, $4, $5. And I have to thank my good friend Woody Spedden, the former CEO of Credence, when he went through this presentation for reminding me of the Oscar Wilde quote that defines what a cynic is. So if we're only focused on cost, I think we can all label ourselves as cynics. We want to be increased on the value as well. So jumping right into that, here's our first case study on actually increasing the value of a wafer sort activity. So a graphics processor customer had a significant yield impact associated with a failure mode that only occurred at high frequencies. This was on the input-output, the high-frequency input-output part of the chip. And using their existing wafer test methodology, they were unable to detect this wafer mode. Essentially, the frequencies emitted by the probe card through the pogo tower up through the test head and the ATE would not admit the frequencies at which this failure mode was happening. As a result, at the wafer sort step, they would essentially call the die good, package it up, and send it on to final test, where it ultimately failed. With a complex, high ASP part in a expensive flip chip package, that's not a really good thing to be doing to your economics. And you see some scenarios associated if you can fix that problem. So what we did, and I'll show you how we did this on the next slide, was worked with NVIDIA and Verigy, published a paper, as I said, that I'll show you on the next slide, to help detect these failures at wafer test and chuck those die out before they were packaged up and sent to final test. There's a significant return associated with that in this market space. In this case, over $2 million recovered just by improving the signal fidelity of wafer test and exposing this failure. The other important thing about this, obviously, is if you're going to do wafer level CSP or some of the other wafer level packaging techniques that are coming out, the final test step essentially moves to the wafer level. And so your wafer test infrastructure